This says two thumbs up, Ebert and Roper, but for the record, they actually didn't give it two thumbs up. I don't know why it's on there. Anyway, before I go into and talk about Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events, aside from talking about the book series, I also feel like I'm obligated to talk about the Netflix show, which ran from 2017 to this year for 3 seasons. And yeah, I gotta say that because the Netflix series not only covers the entire series and not just the first 3 books, and because, well, aside from just covering the first 3 books in the first season, they covered the first 4. Well, with the exception of the last book, they took 2 episodes to tell each story. And it's because of that I think the stories are more fleshed out, and thanks to the creative decisions that added things, which Daniel Handler, aka Lemony Snicket, was involved behind the scenes, that's why it managed to be loyal to the books, but at the same time fresh and new at the same time, even though it made some questionable decisions from time to time. That said, though, even though the show is wildly better, I really like this movie. In fact, maybe even love it. I feel like it's not fair to judge this movie based on the fact that the series did so much more and is more fleshed out. This is, I think, a film that deserves to be recognized on its own. And compared to the books, I'd say that, well, the show, like I said, is what it is compared to the books. And then this, compared to the books, I'd say that they managed to pace it out in a way that helps to make it work based on the 3 books that they're adapting. Here's the plot. With the voice of Jude Law, although I'm not sure he played him physically, Lemony Snicket is a mysterious man who reports to the audience that he's recounting the dastardly events in the lives of the 3 Baudelaire children. Violet, an avid inventor, played by Emily Browning, Klaus, an avid reader, played by Liam Aiken, and young Sonny, an avid biter, played by Kara and Shelby Hoffman. Twins who were about, 3 at the time of this movie? Not even. The 3 have great lives, however, when a mysterious fire destroys their house and kills their parents, they end up orphaned and now, through the means of the banker Mr. Poe, played by Timothy Spall, have to be brought to a new home. The first stop on the list is the home of the dastardly wannabe actor Count Olaf, played by Jim Carrey, whose only real reason for taking the kids in is just to have them do things for him all around the house without any kind of reward or quid pro quo whatsoever, and just because eventually he wants to have their fortune to himself, that they will inherit, but unfortunately will not do so until Violet turns 18. They're able to eventually realizing the man intends to do them harm, they're eventually able to get out of his custody and move on to the care of their kindly herpetologist Uncle Monty, played by Billy Connolly. He handles reptiles. And then later on, their paranoid and panophobic Aunt Josephine, played by Meryl Streep. But in both occasions, Olaf shows up in disguise, refusing to give up on getting his hands on them, and will do anything in order to be able to escape with them, or do them harm in some way or another in order to get his hands on the money on the lucrative money that they will eventually possess. Can they figure out a means of escaping him and find happiness away from these series of unfortunate events? Well, I had a better punchline to this joke, but I can't think of what it was, so I'm just going to move on to my next thought I had. So, yeah, this obviously intended to set up a film series, this movie itself, but at the same time, well, I guess it underperformed at the box office even though it did fine, and as a result, Nickelodeon never produced any of the sequels that they planned. And that's a shame, because I feel like this is a series that much like even though it rushed through things faster, I suppose, than the Netflix series did, it does move at a pace I think is something that can keep the audience interested and not be distracted and just start and put off by the repetition. And it's because of that it is effective and it does move. I feel like maybe this movie shouldn't have been just an hour and 40 minutes, hour 47 minutes to be specific, including 10 minutes of credits. But at the same time, it managed to make every second count. And I think the fact that I was engaged throughout every second is what really does help this movie to be able to get over the fact that it's moving too quickly or that it's carrying on with too much at once. Not to mention, I think the cast, for the most part, really nails it. Jim Carrey, he is a bit too comedic, I will admit, but without saying too much of his performance, because I'm going to talk solely about his performance in another video later on, he's good. He's funny, but at the same time, he is intimidating. You get the sense this is a man who is a complete and total lunatic, pretty practically, who is going to have no qualms whatsoever in targeting 3 innocent children just for money. A question I always asked with the books and this movie and the show was, why in the world do the Baudelaires not just... They clearly don't care about the money. Why would they just convince Olaf to let them go and not kill them in exchange for just giving him the money when the time comes that they can give it to him? Well, I don't think it's a pride thing, their reason being, but it's just they're so convinced that he's not going to just let them go if they give him the money that they won't do that. And not to mention at the same time, I suppose the principle of the matter. It's wrong to indulge his actions by rewarding him, so therefore they will absolutely refuse to do that because it's not what's right. If that makes any sense. The cast, like I said, does nail it. I suppose Liam Aiken and Emily Browning, because they have the most interactions of any other cast members on screen, they're the ones who the movie centers around the most, I suppose, and they have really good chemistry as brother and sister, so I think they help to keep interest in scenes where Jim Carrey is not on screen. I think the direction and the art design and the score by Thomas Newman really help pull things together too. Timothy Spall, he's pitch perfect as Mr. Poe. If I have any complaints about, and hey, Meryl Streep is Meryl Streep. If I have any complaints about the casting whatsoever, I'd say maybe Cedric the Entertainer as the constable. Not that there's anything wrong with his performance whatsoever, and it's a fine performance, but he just always feels so out of place. You get the sense that this is a timeless environment, and yet he feels so modern that, and is talking in a way that somebody from today would talk, and it seemed like he wasn't simplified. His dialogue wasn't simplified enough. It wasn't on the level enough to be timeless, to be fitting to the rest of the story. There's another cameo that I think is maybe a little off-putting too. It's nowhere near as distracting as his, but at the same time, it works for what it is. I don't have any real complaints about that. I think also another impressive. Also, I think Jude Law works as a good narrator. Heck, it's Jude Law, so of course he works as a good narrator. And yeah, I'd say that maybe this is... It's hard to say between this and the Netflix show what has the better vision of the books in mind, because they're both very similar, but at the same time, there is a slight aesthetic difference. I mean, heck, and you would think can't be too much of a difference. I mean, Barry Sonnenfeld was involved behind the scenes with both of them. That is true, but even then, you get the sense that there is because I suppose Daniel Handler is involved more in the Netflix show than he was here. That's why I think it pulls together in being It's why I think that the Netflix show pulls together more as being something that's closer in line to the books, not just simply in detail, but in perception. Not to say that this should be downvoted or looked down upon in any way. I don't think it should. There is a lot of quality being put into this film. This is, I think, of all the book to film adaptations made for kids or young adults in the time since Harry Potter, well, with the exception of Hunger Games, I mean, this is probably that stands the closest in the realm of fantasy. This, I think, is the best quality representation in film of a book, of a family film adapted from a novel, and I think, or from books, and I think that it does deserve to be fitted into that category as something that is of that quality. Heck, it's better than some of the Harry Potter movies. So yeah, is the movie, are there times where Jim Carrey's comedy maybe clashes a little too much with the tone that they're trying to display from the book with this movie? Yes. But even then, it's not that bad. It does still manage to fit in, even if it at times ends up a little scattershot too. Take it for what it's worth and check it out.